participate in it. We have been a real area of excellence, particularly for building technology companies and advanced building materials. So if you haven't been to Phoenix since 2009 Green Build, it's time to come back. I do want to brag. I think I have heard from several people that Phoenix does host the best green builds. And we take pride in it. So if you were at Sheryl Crow opening up in a baseball stadium at 2009 Green Build, that was in Phoenix. And I was excited to be there. I was not mayor at the time, but was actually working in energy efficiency at the local electric utility. So an odd path to mayor and maybe untraditional. I don't know that I've met any other mayors with that particular background, but you can see why I was excited to be here today and why I'm very interested in these topics. Our city staff is mostly in the energy side, is mostly excited about my background. But when I was first elected, they said they were mostly glad that we would have a mayor who would read the building codes, but also a little bit nervous because that is so different than some of the focuses in the past. I have an undergraduate environmental degree and did a lot of work in the energy sector before getting involved in politics. Initially, I got involved through chairing the city's Environmental Quality Commission and helping develop some of our green building programs and our solar energy standard. So this week, I'm still continuing that work, and we just passed a significant budget that created the first ever in the nation Office of Heat Response and Mitigation, which will help us really be climate forward. We're hoping to do programs that will impact those who are most harmed by the heat. We're also hoping to come up with innovative solutions and have the capability to do things that building codes don't usually allow, and really be a center of testing and innovation to see what is possible. We're also going to do old school solutions like tree planting, which we know can help. And then Phoenix has the largest cool pavement program, which takes our city streets that are black and maintain and retain a lot of heat and creates cool pavement, which can, according to Arizona State University, reduce local heat impacts by about 10 degrees. And that matters. You can feel the difference. The budget also did a lot of long range planning for us this week, including along our riverfront. Actually, just before COVID, got to visit the Los Angeles riverfront to see some of the redevelopment that you are all doing and corridors along that. And some of the cool like bike bars that are popping up along the Los Angeles riverfront. Phoenix is a little bit luckier than Los Angeles in that we didn't pave our river, so it'll be a little bit easier to do some of that redevelopment, but wanted to let you know we are inspired by some of the things your city is doing and river-oriented projects in a desert city. So thank you for helping us get some great ideas, and we're excited about moving forward in Phoenix.
Thanks, Mayor. It's really exciting announcements and movement that's been happening, and I think you are addressing the heat. So I think you can very much tell your dad that you really are. Mayor Adler, turning to you. So I know that there's been a lot of work that's being done in Austin to collaborate and partner with education institutions and unions. Can you tell us a little bit about how these important partnerships are really helping advance the climate work and why they're so important?
Absolutely. Let me begin by thanking you for the opportunity to be with you and to be with my colleague. Mayor is absolutely a thought leader in the country, and we really appreciate her leadership on so many issues, including this one. You know, when you're talking about tackling a challenge like climate change mitigation, it really does take an entire community to be involved, because you're making choices. You're making choices about where your priorities are and where your focus is. In today's world, where data does not always have the standing that it should have. Having collective voices in a community from so many different places that are speaking in the same direction and toward the same actions is so incredibly important. So I would begin in a city like Austin with just the number of partners that we have that are willing to stand up and speak to the issue, its importance, and to speak to the data. because it's so hard to really be able to establish those. In specifics, in our city right now, we're so focused on transportation issues and on power generation issues as the two key areas where we can make the the greatest difference, and to do something about the stagger that we're facing. There's some really innovative things that we look for the university to help us with right now with respect to power generation. We have a model city. It used to be where our airport was, that is a planned city that has the cutting edge technologies right now with respect to monitoring power usage in communities and giving immediate feedback to residents in that community. And that's happening outside of city governance, but we are following it quickly with smart metering. To be able to take advantage of the groundbreaking work that's being done out at Mueller by Pecan efforts. University is a real partner with us on transportation as well. In November, we were able to pass, after 3 decades of trying, a bond-like initiative. Is actually a tax levy that the community imposed upon themselves to actually put that plan in place. We did it in the middle of the pandemic, but probably nothing in our community would have had the same value with respect to reducing our carbon footprint and actually finally being able to give people real choices that would get them around our community, not traveling alone in their cars. In Austin right now, 72% of the people commuting to our downtown are doing it alone in their cars. And we real quickly have to get to a mode change. And our goal here by 2038 is to get to a 50-50 change, 50-50 breakdown, and it's going to require us to actually give people choices that are attractive enough to get them to move. Doing a lot of work with the unions and labor in the city as we start changing the nature of the infrastructure that we have in the city, because that requires retooling of many of our trades. And change never comes easily. I don't care what it is. So to have as allies the labor in our city on issues that in many other cities there's initial resistance to having those communities partners in developing our green infrastructure plans, our changes to our land development code, not only to help make sure that they're right, but to share in the authorship and the ownership of that activity is one of the reasons why you can get a community to participate in that level of change.
No, Mayor Adler, it's so fantastic, and I will say that the vote in November on the bond or tax levy is so exciting, and it's really amazing to see a city really take on the importance of that in a way to finance it. And I think that, you know, there's a lot of excitement from all of us in our new Secretary of Transportation and Secretary of Labor, in 2 former mayors who really understand these issues at their core, and really the opportunities that that's going to be providing throughout the Biden administration to do a lot more of everything that you're talking about, Mayor Adler. So I know that we're all so excited about Secretary Buttigieg and Secretary Walsh's leadership. It still is strange to not say mayor on both of those. So I know, I'm sure you all trip up as well.
I call him Secretary Mayor Pete. I mean,
Yes, exactly. I think he'll always be Mayor Pete. So all right, so Mayor Gallego, turning back to you. So I know one area that you're especially passionate about is that of circular economy. And so from your perspective, what are some of the biggest challenges you see in cities really being able to implement the actions that are needed to create a more circular economy? And what are some things that are happening in Phoenix to help address those?
We hope to make Phoenix a real hub of the circular economy and already doing so. For those of you who use building materials, you might find that some of the most innovative products out there come from Phoenix. So if you've seen wall insulation with blue jays in it, that's likely made in Phoenix, Arizona. We have cool companies that are taking glass that was recycled and putting it into gorgeous countertops with like blue and green. So we have a bunch of showpiece places that you can visit if you're ever in our city to see how products can be reused and remade. We also just have great green buildings in general, and we're working on continued innovation in that area. Not far from where I am today at City Hall, we are redoing what used to be a public housing community into a mixed income community. And we're trying to, as much as possible, incorporate circular economy products in that, but we're also doing LEED neighborhood design and cool streets. So we hope it'll be a model of a fun community to be at, but also one that's very sustainable. We'll have solar that will benefit our public housing residents in their monthly energy bill, and it has a real eye towards both great design, but also equity. I hope Phoenix will be a leader in both of those areas. I probably spend more time. So Mayor Pete used to always talk about his sewer system, and and everyone would like roll their eyes. And I spend a lot of time talking about our trash collection system. And I'm sure you're all rolling your eyes too, but luckily the two of you on screen didn't. So I will feel lucky in that area. We are hoping that our what used to be trash will become feedstock for innovative companies of the future, and we can take products and divert them. We created an incubator with Arizona State University called Risen that is helping those companies be creative. And we've had companies, for example, Renewology, that wanted to take our plastic and turn them into fuel pellets, which was very important to me because I was disappointing the fourth graders of Phoenix. And you cannot disappoint the fourth graders of Phoenix because they write a lot of letters to the mayor, and we have an environmental degree. It's especially disappointing if it's the recycling side. But for a long time, we couldn't take all of the plastics that people wanted to recycle, particularly after China stopped taking as many American materials. There just wasn't a local market. And so we were excited to help develop it. And it won't just be Renewology, but we're hoping to work with all kinds of companies. The founder of Keurig is very concerned about the environmental impact of all those plastic coffee pods. And so we're working, can we take our recycling equipment and have equipment that will take those little pods, divert them, and then they can go to a specific reuse just for those pods. So we hope, again, this will generate new companies and new economic activity. Already, the building sector is a huge portion of our economy, and I'm hoping the sustainable building structure will become even more important because of these circular economy initiatives, but also just our general innovation in the area. We're working on all sorts of cool projects to meet our ambitious goals, which we have 50% diversion by 2030 without requiring people to divert. The cities that do the best in terms of recycling programs are the ones that make you do it, and ours at the moment is voluntary. But we also have net zero building goals, and we're hoping to go towards net positive, where more energy is generated on site than what is used. So if you have cool building ideas, please check out the City of Phoenix, because we have quite ambitious goals and we're going to need help to get to them.
That's so great, Mayor, and such exciting things. And I think it really shows the opportunities around collaboration with businesses and other local entrepreneurs in transitioning to circular economy. Quickly, before turning to Mayor Adler, within that, as other cities are really looking to replicate some of the circular economy ideas and things that you're addressing in Phoenix, any advice or any kind of any challenges that you really see that can be taken up by people here today or by others really to address this issue of the circular economy and of waste, right?
Well, one of the things we did that was quite controversial was a waste characterization study. So we have a very diverse city council politically, where we have folks who voted for Trump and folks who voted for Bernie Sanders all coming together, but my more conservative members had so much fun with us studying the trash. But the truth is, if you don't know what's in there, you can't come up with programs to divert it. So it turned out a huge percentage of our waste was green waste from landscaping companies and wood chips and people mowing their grass. And that helped us realize that we could build a composting program and really find an economic use for what used to be landfilled. I assume this is universal, but like I think no one likes landfills. More landfills are not exciting at any end of the political spectrum. And so if we could keep things out of the landfills, that's money taxpayers don't have to spend monitoring landfills and keeping them with security, but also it's using products, including green waste, in a way that creates economic activity. So that was just having the data is where I would recommend cities start. And then talking to your local innovation community about what startups are available and how you might help them grow, as well as the large companies that are interested in doing better.
That's great. And I will say, when I was visiting Phoenix right before COVID, so beginning of 2020, I visited one of the recycling facilities, and it was incredibly impressive, the work that you guys are doing. So very much encourage everybody to look and see what's happening in Phoenix on this. Mayor Adler, turning to you, would love to kind of get into some of these challenges within Austin as well, on kind of what are some of the most challenging aspects of addressing climate change in Austin, and what do you think kind of the next 10 years are just going to be the most critical things to overcome and address?
You know, I think the most difficult challenges that have to be overcome begin with inertia and culture and politics, habit. Again, you know, our two most significant challenges deal with energy generation and transportation. We have a coal plant that we're using. We're in the process of closing that down. It's difficult politically because we don't own it alone. And it doesn't do us any good to extricate ourselves and leave the plant continuing to operate. So we're caught in the difficult politics of how we both extricate and shut it down when we're not the only stakeholder. We're able to push that to a large degree because we own our own power company in Austin Energy. And that's proven to be just a remarkable agent for change for our community. Decades ago, we were able to be some of the earliest investors in renewable energy technology, even at a time when it was not defendable from a cost standpoint, recognizing that if a lot of people just didn't do that, the technologies would never be developed to actually bring down the cost. You know, it's a real celebration now as we enter into new renewable contracts, and every time we do, we average down the cost that our ratepayers are going to be paying over time. But that's very different from the mission-driven abilities that we had owning our own power company. But we live in Texas, and we're fighting even as we speak. Up at the legislature right now that meets every 2 years for 5 months. And there are always challenges, as there are right now, with respect to the city's ability to be able to do that. We have a lot of private companies and entities that would love to take over this market. And recall, as the whole world saw in January, that the power structure, energy structure in our state really built around generating the lowest cost energy, as opposed to more balanced programs that deal with sustainability and Austin Energy, by the way, did pretty good in that storm. We were able to be an energy supplier to the state, and we're able to keep our systems running at a much higher percentage than the state average. So one of our challenges is political. Will we continue to control that institution so we can keep it focused in the correct way? Transportation is hard in Texas. We live in Texas, and everybody loves their their single family vehicle, oftentimes their pickup truck that they're driving. So you're talking about taking a community to a mode shift. And if I've heard one time here in Austin, Texas, I've heard 1,000 times people reminding me that we are not uh, uh, a Northern European country, and what might work there just isn't going to work in Texas. Except that I had the opportunity to go on a bicycle tour of 3 of those national capitals, together with then Secretary of Transportation Fox and future Secretary of Transportation Mayor Pete, and could see that even in those areas where the usage of bikes was so high, when you looked at pictures in those capitals from the early 70s, they were as auto-centric as Austin, Texas is right now. And they were able to make that transition. And to the people that say no one will ever participate in that kind of activity in the heat of Austin, I saw pictures of blizzards in those capitals and people still on their bicycles. You just learn to wear the right clothes and make the right accommodations. So we're going to have to offer people real viable choices that are just as convenient and just as easy. We're going to have to be able to convince the mothers that when they go to work, if they don't have their car and the school calls to say that their daughter is sick at school, that they're going to be able to get to her just as fast without having a car parked at her place of work as she can if she does. So it's dealing with the politics, with the culture. Some of my most progressive neighborhoods, some of my biggest stalwarts in helping with climate mitigation in my city, also live in some of my legacy neighborhoods, and they're not too keen on land development code changes that would have taller, more dense buildings anywhere near where they live, because they don't associate those land development code elements with the kind of climate mitigation work we need to do, and will especially need to do around new transit-oriented stations that we haven't had before. So politics, inertia, and culture, and you just have to work your way through them.
Yeah, no, it's such a, absolutely right, Mayor Adler. And, I think in Copenhagen, they plow the bike lanes before the car lanes, as just when it snows. And it's an incredibly simple thing, but it's incredibly telling to the culture of prioritization around mobility. And they have one of the highest cycling rates of any city around the world. And, Copenhagen made decisions in the 70s, as you're kind of saying, around real investment in cycling infrastructure in very much similar ways that you and Austin are making them today. And so I think it's really important that these major infrastructure decisions on, in Los Angeles, there's light rail being built. In Phoenix, there's mass transit being built. These are 3 cities of very few in the United States right now that are actively building new transportation. And I think it's so important as leaders to really be doing that and showing that and looking for other cities around the world. And as you're saying, kind of making some of those seeming like small changes, even like around cycling infrastructure, that change the culture of it and really get down to the culture of it. All right, so before we kind of go to the last question, want to see, Mayor Adler, Mayor Gallego, anything that you wanted to say as follow-up, or then we're going to kind of, just go to the last question and close out.
Well, I did want to recognize Mayor Adler for changing the transportation infrastructure in his community. He brought so many diverse interests together to get that passed at the ballot. And I think it really is a role model for how sustainability can move forward, but you got to have more people at the table in the way that he did that. And also on his utilities, my boss, when I worked at energy efficiency at the electric utility, went over to run efficiency at Austin Energy. So I can testify they have good folks.
Thank you very much for that, Mayor, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
That's great.
We don't want to be an exporter of people in Phoenix, but given the demand for our housing right now, maybe we've been the fastest growing city in the country and also had the fastest increase in property values and housing costs. And so when you're having like 20% increases in a year in housing costs, it's gotten very hard for us to keep up, because most people in this community, their wages didn't go up 20%. And I also would echo what Mayor Adler said about the difficult politics. When with some of our more forward-thinking sustainability programs, we have been preempted at the state legislature. And so that is a real challenge as well that you probably do not face in California, but one that does impact us in Texas and in Arizona.
Yeah, absolutely. A challenge that both of you, a very real challenge for both of you here today. Okay, so finally, I wanted to end by asking both of you, I mean, obviously we have an audience here of municipal employees, private sector, sustainability professionals, individuals passionate about the climate crisis, you know, and so what advice can you kind of leave to the audience here on how they can really further this work within their professional and personal careers to really combat the crisis, and how they can be leaders of change in supporting all the work that you guys, you know, are speaking about today?
So I would say it's
Mayor Gago, yep. Start.
Important to be involved in elections at all level of government. If your state assembly candidate is in front of you, ask about green building and what their platform is. When you're voting in your city elections, be involved and ask the candidates questions about that, even just provoking thoughts. For those of us who are curious, we may go out and say, yeah, we're going to learn more about composting toilets because it matters to someone in our community. But so many of our new cool programming came because people in the green building community asked about it. So we're trying to do a living building in Phoenix, and that really came from the private sector. We had a contest to see if you could do a building that used 80% less energy than a normal building without on-site renewable generation. And we had 8 different submissions that all met that pretty ambitious goal. We put the winner up on our website. So if you want to build it, we would love to hear. And if you build it in Phoenix, this 80% energy savings building, it's $0 permit fees. But these came from people in the green building community who was like, here's an idea about how you can push innovation and make us a better city. I would also encourage everyone, as you look at your company's investments and your personal portfolio, to look at green finance. So that could be for many people, what's called ESG funds, where they have real sustainability governance, environmental governance goals. We at the City of Phoenix just went out to the markets to issue some debt for our water system, sustainability bonds. And they were 4 times oversubscribed because there was so much demand from people who wanted to invest green. But that gives us the ability to keep doing it, and also inspires us maybe to do it a little bit more. So when there's that market demand, and even if you're just a small part of it, that can help us move forward and have more options to do sustainable things, which we hope will also benefit your company's portfolio, your personal portfolio. And I guess one area that still does worry me is the majority of people in my community still do not believe climate change impacts them directly. And I've been in cases where people have had flooding in Phoenix because our precipitation is now coming in single intense events, but not connected that to climate change, even though they're like really like having to tear out the carpets in their homes. And so it would be helpful for me as an elected official if more people realize the connections between public policy and climate change, and that this is a problem we can address with public policy.
That's great. Mayor Adler.
You know, the advocates are incredibly important, and I think I touched on this in the answer to the first question that you asked. The message that's going to the larger community has to be constant and consistent. So much of what we do has an impact on climate. So it's real important to be pointing those things out everywhere they are. the connection between policy or actions and activity and climate mitigation, as the mayor points out, are key. And I think that takes repetition of message and consistency of message. But it also takes validators. The government officials can say that as much as they like, and half of the audience will never trust it, just because of who it's coming from. The advocates in the community are incredibly important because they have a reach to a grassroots that may be different than the politicians, and that voice is just incredibly important. But that is not always necessarily the trusted voice either, because they're advocates. And people kind of expect that. But when your universities start speaking in the same way, when your labor unions and organizations speak to that issue, that is not necessarily what people first think of when they think of labor issues, while it obviously is for the labor workforce. When people hear organizations like that pressing those issues, it has an entirely different weight. You need lots of voices saying the same message, because people will only pick out ultimately whatever voice it is that they actually trust. And it's so different for different people. I'd also emphasize what the mayor pointed out: getting involved in the political process is key. And I would break that into two different areas, probably more, but certainly electoral politics and making sure that the right people are in the right places, but making sure that the political debate is actually fact-based. Is real important, and again needs validators from outside of government. When a politician accuses another politician of fudging on the truth, I don't think anyone hears it. It's got to be a voice from outside. So making sure the guardrails are in place from outside, and that's become so important. It's so easy to watch political debate right now, especially on social media, and roll your eyes at it as you click to the next thing you were about to look at. It really would be worth taking a second to say, even without regard to what the ultimate answer is on this policy question, what you just wrote is not true. It would be an important thing for people to do more and more in their regular lives frequently. If you see something and you don't respond, then you have acquiesced in that untruth spreading. And that acquiescence sometimes looks like approval. You've got to actually respond, even briefly, to say that's just not true. And then lastly, outside of government, the involvement on things like the proposition we have, the initiatives that go to voters. Those things only happen because there are people stepping up to support the political effort. The fundraising for those efforts can't come from government. And in so many places, like here in Texas, government can't fund any of those operations. We're legally prohibited from actually participating in advocacy on something that would go to our voters, which is why you see everybody going through such contortions down here. But the people that don't have to go through those contortions are the business community, the people that know, the validators in the community, the engineers, the construction companies, the special interest groups, the stakeholder groups that may be focused on something else as their chief focus, but have to know the relationship between whatever it is that they're focused most on and the effort to save the world. So there are so many opportunities and ways, but that involvement is critical.
Thank you so much, Mayor Adler and Mayor Gallego. I mean, I think overall, everybody use your voices in your communities, in your professional life. provide these, work with the city on innovative ideas and solutions. We all need to put in everything to solve this crisis together. So, and build those coalitions, find those new voices that Mayor Adler's talking about, and speak up, right? I think that that's a major theme for both of you, is speak up with your voice, your data, your ideas. So I really want to thank you both so much today for taking the time. Thank everybody for joining us for this really exciting conversation and event today. And encourage everybody to attend the next session that's starting now, I think. So, and have a wonderful weekend, a wonderful close of the conference. And again, Mayor Gallego, Mayor Adler, thank you again so much for your leadership within C40, within the United States, and within your cities. And we'll hopefully see you all sometime soon.
Laura, great job. Bye-bye, Mayor.
Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, everyone, for being here. Thank you, mayors, and thank you, Laura. We are so lucky to have coalitions like C40 to bring us all together. So for the next session, please check the agenda tab on your left and hop in for the awards and our next keynote. You will need to exit this and then go to the agenda and click into the next session to see it.